What was the best worth it detention in high school? Story 1. In high school, my dad dropped me off out front after all the buses had left. The vice principal was being an ass for no reason and giving my dad shit for parking in a bus lane, when in fact he had not violated any rules. It was clear that the VP was trying to pick a fight. After a brief heated exchange, my dad drove off and I heard the VP mutter "asshole" under his breath. I stood out in front of the building and waited for the VP to turn around and see me, held up a brazen middle finger, and walked inside, ignoring his demands that I stop. I proceeded to dodge detention until I was pulled from class. Story 2. I went through a K-8 Catholic school. Our school lunches were pitifully small, the same portion for first graders as for the 8th graders. The lunch ladies understood that the portions were small and would often let students get second servings, which they were otherwise going to throw out. I went to get some extra salad. Rather than just giving me an additional serving, they gave me the entire remaining heaping mound of cheap iceberg lettuce drenched in Italian dressing. It was seriously probably several pounds of lettuce. I had no intention of eating the entirety of it, but a teacher caught me eating leftovers and said I ought to finish it, otherwise it would be so wasteful. At that point, it became a competition to prove her wrong. I had to stay probably an extra 10 minutes to finish munching down on the pile of salad. When I finished, the teacher called me a pig and gave me detention for some arbitrary reason. I relished in the look of her disgust and gleefully took the detention. Story 3. Moved to a new high school that had classrooms that were not laid out in a standard way. They had a no-tolerance tardy policy. Show up to class 30 seconds late? Detention. You're a new kid and can't figure out where the classes are? Detention. On the first day, I racked up 7 detentions. Shit keeps going on. I figured out that detention in this school is just a 45-minute study hall where I can get my homework done in a quarter of the time that it takes me to do it at home. And because I played sports, Saturday detention was waived for me. Now the worst case scenario is that I spent a minimal amount of extra time at school and my homework is done in record time. Guess how my tardiness improved under these circumstances? The principal calls me in at the end of the semester or year, I forget. He asks me, "Why are you trying to wallpaper your house with detention slips?" I explained the situation, which went over well because I had straight A's and no other behavioral stuff. The principal points out that it is literally impossible for me to complete the detentions I have before I graduate. End result, I get excused from ever getting a detention for being tardy for the rest of high school. Story 4. In 8th grade, I hit my friend in the balls in front of a teacher. On the detention slip, I was written up for attacking another student's scrotum. My mom even got a laugh out of that one. She definitely included the scrotum part just for the humor of it, I feel. Story 5. I went to a strict technical school. Like, you always had to sit in the same spot in the cafeteria with no talking, nothing other than bread or beverages on the table, no schoolwork or laptops or phones. These were just some of the rules during midday. However, once you were in the 5th or 6th year, 17 to 18 years old, you were allowed to leave and were taken off of these lists. I went to the secretary of the school one day to discuss some initiatives we were starting in the school in terms of soccer tournaments during the week, etc. He got a call and left the room for 2 minutes. The lunch forms were open on his computers. I took mine and some of my friends' names off. Next week, we slipped out of the campus and we were free. It felt like we'd escaped prison. It took them about 2.5 months to notice. Longer if it weren't for a new person being added to our class. I got 1 day of detention in return for 50 days on the loose. Boy, was it worth it. Story 6. 11-year-old me thought it would be hilarious to take chicken drumsticks along to the music class instead of my actual drumsticks. Bits of chicken flying around a drum kit, a class hysterically laughing, a red-faced angry music teacher, and I later found myself in detention. From memory, no significant damage was caused to the drum kit. It was a ratty-looking thing that needed heads replacing for many years before 11-year-old me came along anyway. 5 years on from the chicken drumstick incidents, I began earning a living from playing drums. But my days of using chicken ended at age 11. 16 years later, people from that class still bring up the chicken drumstick incidents in conversation with me. Story 7. Some kids were stealing money out of the locker rooms every day after school while sports teams were practicing. I skipped cross-country practice one day and hid in the shower area in an attempt to catch them. After waiting for over an hour, I finally heard someone enter. I didn't know what I would be up against, so I had taken my belt off as some sort of makeshift weapon. It just made me feel safer. I heard the sound of Velcro separating, and I knew that I had finally caught him. I ran out of the locker area, and he flung the wallet in his hands away and immediately pretended to just be opening a lock on the locker. The culprit was this tiny 8th grader. Junior high was connected to the high school. As he sat there fumbling with a lock, I just stood and waited. Finally, when it became clear to me that he wasn't fooling me and that he didn't know the combination of the locker he was trying to open, he looked up at me. I started yelling at him, telling him how many people wanted to kick his ass. The wallet he was opening was one of my friends, who was in an open gym close by. I told him to wait there unless he wanted trouble and went to get my friend. Ultimately, we started trying to extort the money he had stolen over the last few weeks with threats because we were concerned that if we turned him in, we wouldn't see a dime. Finally, the kid turned himself in because he didn't have any of the money left, a way to make the money, and was legitimately concerned that we were going to hurt him. The discipline lady said something I'll never forget. "Mark, you just can't do that. I'm glad you did it, but you can't take the law into your own hands. I'm sorry, but I've got to give you detention for this." She asked why I didn't turn him in, so I answered her honestly. She asked us to get a list together and made the parents pay up. All in all, totally worth it. Story 8. I had a teacher who would not let anyone go to the bathroom for the entire year. So the last month of school, my friends and I got so fed up with it that we decided to take action. I brought an extra change of clothes hidden in my backpack and drank 3 bottles of water at lunch. During class that afternoon, I asked the teacher if I could use the restroom, and of course she responded with the usual no. I said, okay, and I just pissed all over myself in the desk. I had an extra change of clothes, so it was only uncomfortable for a little bit. The look on her face was worth it. Now she lets any and everyone go to the bathroom as needed. You're welcome, America. You could have just poured a water bottle on your crotch or something, but okay. Story 9. I once investigated a whole revolution in my Catholic school. We had a horrible math teacher that nobody liked, and when he took vacations, they brought a substitute teacher that was really great. So we did a petition with signatures from students of all grades for them to keep her as the official teacher. I was the head of the movement, so I went to the principal with the document to show our efforts. She laughed at me and told me to get the hell out of there because the students don't have the right to demand such things. I went back to my class crying, 7th grade, and my classmates became very angry that the principal had treated me like that, so everyone got out of class and started to call the other students in all classes to join them. And they did. At the end of it, everyone stood in the street in front of the school yelling that the teacher was a bitch. I was in serious trouble after that, but totally worth it. Story 10. After being bullied a lot between the ages of 8 to 14, I finally snapped when I was walking away from a bully and he said, "Keep rolling, fat boy," in front of a girl I liked. I turned around in blinding anger and hit him so hard that I broke a few bones of my hand and his nose. He fell back and landed in a pile of mud and started crying. Fast forward to sitting outside the head teacher's office after I was reported for fighting. And out comes my favorite teacher, who apparently saw the whole thing and fought my corner, meaning the only punishment I got was a week of lunchtime detentions. I was never bullied again after that incident, and I wish I had done it sooner. I just wanted to say that, as an adult, this is clearly not the correct response to verbal abuse. But that being said, as a 14-year-old boy, the only option I saw at the time was to wait it out until the end of school, 2 to 3 years I think, or start defending myself. It's nice to read that you're not alone in your worst experiences, and I have enjoyed your stories. Lastly, to those asking, nothing really happened with my crush. I was still a fat kid, but I like to think I gained some amount of respect after that day. Story 11. I was a freshman in high school and still a religious virgin. I was asked why I was waiting to have sex until I was married. I answered with several reasons, including that I didn't want to end up with STDs. A nearby girl who didn't really care for me assumed that I was trying to say that I didn't want to end up like her and threatened to shoot me. I calmly told her to shut her mouth. Both of us were threatened to be suspended. She cried and asked for forgiveness from the principal. I sat in his office with a straight look on my face, insisting "shut your mouth" was a sufficient response to a death threat. Because she cried and I didn't, I was suspended. She was not. Story 12. My grandpa was the math teacher at Maple Grove High School for a long time after coming back from Vietnam. It's a small school of about 400 to 500 kids at the time, and he was very much high on the chain of command for the school because he played such an active part in the school, like PTA director, head football and basketball coach, etc. My dad was his jackass son that was the fullback for the football team with a full-ride baseball scholarship to Syracuse, which he lost after breaking his collarbone in his senior homecoming game. One of the coolest guys in the whole school, and my uncle was his younger brother, following right in his footsteps. My dad's always been a prankster, goofy bastard, and one day in the upstate New York winter, he thought it would be a good idea to bring a bunch of snowballs into the school with my Uncle Scott and have a snowball fight in the lunchroom. Hilarity ensues, and they're both brought to the principal's office, my grandpa's best friend at the school. My grandpa comes in fuming and mad, but understanding, and both of them are given 3 days of detention. As they were all leaving the principal's office, my dad and my uncle had one more snowball left, and they both threw them simultaneously at the principal. Mind you, this is right in front of their dad. The principal got clocked right in the balls and the chest with the snowballs. That 3 days quickly became a 2-week detention, and to this day they say it was totally worth it. They still keep in touch with the principal to this day and have a couple of beers over it. Story 13. In elementary, I got detention because I got the last word in a snowball fight by bringing one into my classroom in my coat pocket and throwing it at my friend. Spent lunch recess writing, "I will not throw snow in school" 1,000 times for a few days, but totally worth it. Story 14. In my school, there was a rule that if the teacher didn't show up within 10 minutes, we were allowed to leave. So once we were waiting for my German teacher, the whole class decided to leave after 8 to 9 minutes. We started walking, and then suddenly we spot her behind us, and the whole class just starts running away from her and down the stairs. She runs after us while yelling German obscenities at us. We escaped, but everyone got detention. Story 15. I was in 8th grade and our gym teacher picked one student per class to make his personal bitch. I wasn't having any of it with everything that he tried. I was able to one-up him. His final straw was when we were throwing frisbees and he threw one at me. At the last second he said, "Sodi, heads up," expecting me to get hit in the face. I don't really know what happened, but without looking, I grabbed it, spun it around, and whipped it back to him fast enough and hard enough to give him a bloody nose. He sent me to the principal's office while she was laughing her ass off and had to give me a 3-day suspension due to attacking a teacher. I found out 2 years later that he was fired from his job after that year due to multiple students from several years coming forward and claiming physical and verbal abuse. So it was totally worth it to get that asshole out of teaching. Ah yes, a quick time event. Your player is skilled at button mashing. Story 16. I got in trouble for breaking up a fight, or at least I was breaking it up until I saw that my twin brother was getting choked out by the biggest kid in the school. I slugged him in the face a dozen more times and ended up kneeing his head into a locker a few more. Walked away unscathed. Got pulled out of the study center not 10 minutes later. Story 17. A girl I had a major crush on passed me a note. A teacher saw the pass and said to bring it to her. I flat out told her no. I was sent to the office and I read it on the way just in case I had to give it up. The note basically said she was falling in love with me and wanted to know if I felt the same. Worth it. I never lost the note/letter. Yes, we dated and it was amazing. The sad part is that her father got a job in another state and she had to move. We tried to stay connected back then, it was the late 90s, but it ultimately didn't work. It was becoming painful for both of us and we just lost contact. A few years ago, I found out she was alive and doing well. I'm happily married to a wonderful woman now and there's nothing I would do to change that. My ex and I had our time together and it caused us both to grow emotionally. I don't think I'd be the person I am today if not for that experience. So I say it once more, worth it. Story 18. In the Netherlands, we have a system whereby if you're late to class, you go to the janitor to get noted down for being late. And this can lead to detention after it happens a couple of times. They are categorized into good reasons and poor reasons. Good reasons include bike dysfunctions. I had a dysfunction once and was late to a class given by an old, always annoyed female math teacher who was also my tutor for that year. When given the reason, she sent me to the janitor but phoned that the reason was illegitimate, so I was given a piece of paper with "late for illegitimate reasons" on it to return to the teacher in the class in question. I found the situation rather unreasonable at the time, and when I got back, I tore the paper to pieces in front of her, and threw it at her in an arc so some of it hit her face and the rest came down on her like some paper snow. It was a pretty good act, and I got sent out plus detention for it, parents were called, etc. My parents, however, did have a functional brain and when phoned in, just laughed in reply, and pointed out that it was in fact unreasonable, thus warranting the response. It's no grand thing, and I was usually well behaved, but when something which I perceived to be unreasonable transpired, a reaction appropriate to me at the time it was given, leading to a detention in a couple of different incidents. This one was worth it for the reaction on her face, though. She became known as the Snow Hag for a little while after that. Story 19. I can't remember why, but my yearbook teacher in high school wanted to keep me over to lunch for detention when I hadn't brought a lunch, so I had nothing to eat. I said nope and left his class when the bell rang. He shouted at me after angrily, but I ignored him, walked home and made a sandwich. He called while I was there, but he failed to realize, and I was mildly surprised my mother backed me up on this, that though I was 16 at the time, I was living very technically as an independent, working 2 jobs, renting my parents' basements, and paying for my own schooling. So my mother told him that she's not dealing with school calls about me and that she had to speak to me directly to sort it out. He instantly became a lot more civil when I got on the phone with him, and we agreed to have a meeting after school to sort it out. Story 20. 7th grade, 1982. I was sent to the principal's office for some reason or another, nothing detention-worthy. Was left alone to wait there for a really long time. Sat there, waiting. Sharpened a pencil for the heck of it. The teacher's pencil sharpener was way better than the ones I had in my class. I was impressed with how sharp it got that pencil, like a dart or something. On an impulse, I threw it like a dart at the clock on the wall, and it stuck perfectly in the heavy paper face. Fast forward to the principal finally walking in to see me launching sharpened pencils at the clock full of holes. What the heck are you doing? I don't know how it happened, but without missing a beat, my mouth somehow said, just killing time. Wittiest thing I'd ever said. Totally worth the detention, calls to my parents, trials, and tribulations that followed after. This deserves to be praised. I laughed out loud. No, really. I had to do multiple takes. Story 21. I got a Saturday detention for skipping school. My girlfriend, now wife, would pick me up in the morning. She had a car, I didn't, and we would drive to school together. It was nice to have some time together in the morning, and she liked to watch the sunrise. One day, we were on our way at 6:45 in the goddamn morning and started speculating about how little we wanted to be in school. I forgot who brought up skipping first, but we thought we'd give it a try and see what happened. Knowing we'd be caught if we simply didn't show up at all, we each called the school and left a message saying that we would be out sick that day. We managed to do this 20 times before anyone caught on. And everyone thought we only skipped the one day we got caught. The only non-student to put it together was our music teacher. His name was pronounced Mr. Bro, I shit you not. And he was a total bro about it, never said a word. Detention was waking up on Saturday, going to school, and helping set up for the spring sports. I ended up getting to spend most of the day with my girlfriend outside on a beautiful spring morning. When we found out about the punishment, we just laughed. Totally worth 21 days of lounging together. Story 22. So I and a friend of mine were around on the computers one day in English class. Typical high school shit. I don't remember why, but I typed in the word chicken over and over and then copy and pasted it until the document was over 500 pages long. Now for some reason, I thought it would be funny to print this 500-page literary masterpiece out into a random printer in the school. You know, for giggles. So I select the print drop box and close my eyes and pick a random one. My friends and I laugh about it for a while and then completely forgot about it until the next morning. Loudspeaker calls me down to the office, and me being a complete had totally forgotten about the previous day, so I had no idea why the principal wanted to talk to me. I walked into her office and she looked at me super pissed, so I'm thinking, what the frick is going on? What did I do? She bends down under her desk and struggles to pull up a foot-high pile of paper and slams it onto the desk. "What the hell is this?" she says. I look down and every single paper just has the word chicken written 1,000 times on each page. It turns out the printer I randomly selected happened to be my chemistry teacher's printer. In the middle of her class, it began pouring out my poultry novel. Apparently no one could stop it until the printer ran out of paper, so I ended up getting a Saturday's detention, and my chemistry teacher hated me for the rest of the year. 2 days later, the teacher refilled her paper tray and it happened again. No regrets. Story 23. Getting kicked out of class for making a substitute teacher cry. For background, the teacher was horrible with the class, told the students they were dumb, talked down to them, and all around just not a very healthy educational environment. We watched a movie on space exploration, and after part 1, I talked to her about how we could just put bubble structures on a planet with an atmosphere. Put plants in there, slowly expand and increase until they cover the whole planet. She laughed at me and told the class how this would never work and continues with her lesson plans. The next day, we watched part 2 of the film, which goes over the idea of terraforming, using structures where they gradually increase the size of the structures to alter the planet and make it habitable. Sure, they also said it would take an extremely long time and be super costly, so not a very viable option, but nevertheless, I felt vindicated. Anyways, one day she picked on the fat kid sitting next to me and I lost my cool. I stood up from my desk and proceeded to berate her, telling her that she shouldn't be allowed to shape the minds of children, that she was awful at her job, and how I truly believe that she should look into another occupation. After some choice of verbal jabs, I got sent to the office. After I left, she burst into tears, and I felt my outburst was justified. Story 24. Went to a private Christian school during middle school. Was playing basketball during gym class and this punk just kept on running his mouth to me during the game. He wasn't yelling or anything, but if he would run past me, he would say things under his breath to me. Now, I'm not a huge guy or anything, but I'm athletic, and then this kid was not. He was just lanky. I catch the ball and am looking to pass. He runs past behind me and just digs his elbows into the side as he passes me. That was the last straw. I just dropped the ball and started beelining towards him. He realized what was going on and started to run too. While this is happening, our fat gym teacher also attempts to waddle my way to catch me, but it was too late. I grabbed the kid's shirt and pulled him down. As I was about to start wailing on the kid, my bigger football player friend just comes and starts to tackle me. In hindsight, he was a good friend for doing that. Got detention along with that kid for cussing and instigating a fight, even though he was the one that did it. Oddly enough, we became friends after that, so yeah, the detention was well worth it.